Set in a future era, the scene shows a man named Paul, who is trying to find shelter because of monstrous beings that suddenly attack humans. According to various sources on the internet, these creatures are frightening mutations of different animals. As Paul passes by a house, he accidentally finds two abandoned infants, fraternal twins, left alone by their parents. Feeling concerned, Paul decides to take care of them. 20 years later, human life has reverted to a kind of prehistoric existence, with no internet available for communication. Meanwhile, the twins Paul raised have grown into adult men: Joseph, the younger brother, and Thomas, the older brother. Every day they make sure to secure every part of their home, both the outer door and all the windows, when night approaches. They do this to protect themselves from the terrifying monsters that appear only at night. One evening, while they are having a meal together, Thomas and Joseph begin to argue because of their differing opinions, which angers Paul. He often wonders how his sons would handle life without him. Suddenly, the front door is forced open by one of the monsters trying to get in. Fortunately, Paul has installed extra locks, so it fails to breach the house.
Hey, stop! Stop it!
The next morning, noticing the damaged door, Paul asks Thomas and Joseph to look for wooden boards in the forest to reinforce the house against future attacks. Paul realizes the job would be easier if he could delegate some of the tasks, so he decides to teach Joseph how to drive, since Joseph is the more quick-witted. Sure enough, in no time, Joseph succeeds in driving the vehicle by following his father's instructions. Upon arriving back home, Paul divides responsibilities between his two sons, instructing them to travel to a certain place to gather additional supplies for repairing the house. Initially, everything goes smoothly, but along the way, Thomas suddenly decides to leave, saying he wants to visit his girlfriend and that he will return before evening. Having no other choice, Joseph continues to carry out their father's orders alone. Meanwhile, Thomas proceeds to another settlement where his girlfriend, Charlotte, lives. Without feeling any remorse for leaving Joseph behind, Thomas spends time with Charlotte, allowing Joseph to work by himself. During that same afternoon, Paul, while resting by a river, cannot help worrying about what would happen if his two sons fail to unite when he eventually passes away. As evening approaches, Joseph finishes collecting the supplies and prepares to head home, still waiting for Thomas at the prearranged time. However, Thomas does not show up at all. It turns out Thomas has fallen into a ravine while running through the forest. Believing Thomas may have gone home first, Joseph decides to return by himself. Arriving at the house, Paul immediately asks Joseph where Thomas is. Joseph explains that they went their separate ways because Thomas wanted to see his girlfriend, but they had agreed to meet again in the late afternoon. Unfortunately, Thomas did not keep that promise, leading Joseph to think Thomas might have gone home earlier. Worried that something terrible may have happened to Thomas, Paul decides to go looking for him and tells Joseph to lock the house until morning. In the dark forest, Thomas is struggling to find a way out while the monsters begin to harass him. Fortunately, Paul arrives and confronts the creatures, then searches for a way down into the ravine to reach Thomas. Once they reunite, Thomas embraces his father, apologizing right away. Meanwhile, Joseph, who is alone in the house, comes up with a plan to capture any monster that might break in. His strategy is to leave the front door unlocked, then rely on a trap he has installed. By morning, with Paul and Thomas still missing, Joseph suspects something may have gone wrong. After finding out where Thomas and his father are, Joseph immediately asks Thomas about Paul's condition. Thomas reveals that an explosion injured Paul when he tried to fend off some monsters. With no other choice, Joseph helps carry Paul back home. Once inside, Thomas becomes curious about a wooden box in Joseph's room. Feeling intrigued, he opens it right away. Seeing Paul's health not improving, Thomas proposes taking their father to Charlotte's settlement, hoping they might have some medicine to treat him. Upon arrival, however, the leader of that settlement, Charlotte's mother Rose, flatly refuses their request, claiming they have no medication to give. Concerned for their own safety, Rose urges Thomas to remain with them. For reasons unknown, Thomas agrees to stay behind, leaving Joseph alone with their gravely injured father. With deep disappointment, Joseph decides to bring Paul back home. While Thomas is in Charlotte's place, he seems untroubled and free from guilt about leaving his father. Yet secretly, Thomas begins searching around the settlement's kitchen for any medicine that might help Paul, and indeed he finds some. Unfortunately, Charlotte catches him in the act, though Thomas apologizes and promises he will return as soon as he delivers the medicine to his father. As Thomas is about to leave, a guard at the settlement points a weapon at him for holding the medicine. Thomas tries to explain that he had already asked Charlotte's permission, but the guard still accuses him of stealing. Thomas is then taken to a storage area for punishment, desperately trying to convince everyone that he had permission from Charlotte, but they refuse to listen. Later that night, Rose is awakened because the power at their settlement goes out unexpectedly. When her husband checks outside, several monsters appear and start their assault. Rose and her husband end up losing their lives. Turning back to Thomas's situation, everyone is thrown into panic when the creatures breach the settlement through an underground route. They had not anticipated that the monsters could be so cunning. One by one, the mutants attack everyone there. When a monster targets Thomas, Charlotte appears at the last moment to help him, and they decide to escape. Thomas suggests going to his father's house. Eventually, Thomas and Charlotte make it to Paul's home, where Thomas apologizes to Joseph for abandoning him earlier. He explains that he only chose to remain at Rose's settlement to obtain medicine. Overjoyed, Joseph hugs his brother, but also informs Thomas that they are not yet safe. Joseph recently discovered an underground tunnel, likely dug by the monsters. Meanwhile, Paul finally regains consciousness and calls for both sons. Paul asks what they are working on, and Joseph explains his plan to blow up the monsters. Watching Joseph and Thomas collaborate, Paul is filled with relief, knowing that after he is gone, they will stand by each other. Paul then warns them that the plan's success rate might be 100%, only if someone lures the monsters in. Paul swiftly locks the door from the outside, telling Joseph and Thomas to hide themselves according to the strategy. In a final act of sacrifice, Paul gives up his life to protect his children. The creatures are eliminated by the explosion Joseph set up, but Paul also takes his last breath.
Come here, boy. How much time do you need? We can help.
Distraught, Joseph wants to search for his father's whereabouts, but Thomas insists that they leave, since there might still be monsters that survived. With her weapon, Charlotte manages to neutralize the remaining creatures. The three of them, Thomas, Joseph, and Charlotte, then agree to start anew somewhere else, hoping to find other surviving settlements. They also promise to remain together and protect one another. Then, the film comes to a close. If you like this video, don't forget to subscribe. Because by subscribing you have supported me to make better videos. See you in the next video.